Captain Ryland sat in the cold chamber that the Zitherans called a guest room. To him it felt more like a prison. Smooth walls of black stone curved around him, and a faint hum filled the air as if the whole palace itself was alive. The Queen had left him with only one choice: agree to her demand or face death. He could not believe how quickly things had gone wrong. He had come here to study the strange energy signal from the planet, not to become a pawn in alien politics. Ryland stood and paced across the room. The floor lit up softly under his boots, reacting to his steps. He pressed his palm against the wall, pretending to stretch, but really testing its surface. Hard, unbreakable. He tapped it lightly with his knuckles, and the sound was dull, almost swallowed. The palace was designed to hold people, not protect them. Smart cage, Ryland muttered under his breath. But no cage is perfect. He crouched near the base of the wall where the glow met the floor. A thin seam ran along the edge, and behind it he could hear a faint vibration. Power conduits. That hum he heard earlier, it wasn't background noise. It was the flow of energy through the palace itself. Ryland smiled. If there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding weak spots. Hours passed before a servant drone floated into the chamber, carrying a tray with shining plates of food. The drone was oval, with small arms that extended from its body. It made no sound except the faint buzz of its hover field. Ryland thanked it out of habit, though he knew it could not understand him. He watched as it glided back out, the door sealing behind it with a hiss. He sat down and ate slowly, using the time to think. Escape was difficult. The Queen's guards wore heavy armor and carried long weapons that pulsed with energy. He had seen them outside the throne room, huge, disciplined, and alien. He knew he couldn't fight them head-on, but maybe he didn't need to. Humans didn't always win by strength. They won by cleverness. Later, when the palace dimmed its lights to simulate Zitharan night, Ryland went to work. He pulled apart the tray the drone had brought. The metal was light but strong, some kind of alien alloy. Still, he bent the pieces with slow force, shaping them into thin strips. He used his belt buckle to scrape against the stone floor, creating sparks. The sound echoed, but he worked carefully, timing his movements with the hum of the palace energy. He pressed one strip into the seam at the base of the wall. Sparks jumped as the strip touched a power conduit. He quickly pulled it back, heart racing. Good. That meant the conduit was right there. If he could disrupt it, maybe he could cut power to the door's lock. It was risky, but every second in this place was risky. Ryland froze when he heard soft footsteps outside. He quickly hid the metal strips under the thin bedding. The door slid open and Princess Lyra stepped inside. She was tall and graceful, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked nothing like the armored guards. Her robes shimmered with colors that shifted like water. "You are restless," she said in a calm voice. Her accent twisted the words, but he understood her. "My mother believes you will give answer tomorrow." Ryland studied her carefully. She was young, curious, and far less threatening than the Queen. But she was still part of this world. He could not trust her completely. "I don't think your mother will like my answer," he said honestly. Lyra tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Then you will not live." The way she said it was not cruel, only factual, as if she were explaining the weather. Ryland felt a chill but kept his voice steady. "Tell me," he said, "why does your mother force this?" "Why me?" Lyra hesitated. For a moment she seemed unsure whether to speak. Then she stepped closer. "Our people. We join bloodlines to keep power strong. My mother sees your kind as different. Strong in mind, quick to change. She fears outsiders, but she also sees use. If you are bound to us, it shows strength to our enemies." Ryland frowned. "So it wasn't personal, it was politics." He shook his head. "Where I come from, we don't do things like that. Marriage isn't a weapon." Lyra looked at him curiously, as if trying to imagine such a world. "Strange human," she said softly. Always questioning, she turned to leave but paused at the door. "If you wish to live, learn our ways. If you do not, you will be crushed by them." Then she was gone. When she left, Ryland sat on the edge of the bed thinking. Her words were a warning, maybe even a kindness. She wasn't his enemy, but she also wasn't his savior. If he wanted to live, he had to rely on himself. He went back to work with the metal strips. This time he pushed carefully against the conduit. Sparks leapt again and the wall panel flickered faintly. He grinned. The system wasn't perfect, it could be tricked. For the next hour he worked, pressing and pulling until finally the door light dimmed for just a second. Not much, but enough. He now knew it was possible to cut power to the locks, even briefly. It wasn't escape, not yet, but it was a path. Humans always found paths. The next day, Rylan was summoned again to the throne room. Guards escorted him through long halls lined with tall statues of Zitharan warriors. The palace was magnificent, filled with light that shifted like living fire. He walked calmly, hiding his plan behind a mask of silence. The queen sat on her throne, watching him with cold eyes. "Human," she said, "your time runs short. Decide." Rylan bowed slightly, pretending to show respect while his mind raced. He couldn't reveal his plan yet. He needed more time, but he also needed to keep the queen's attention on him, not on his secret work. "I need to understand more about your ways," he said carefully. "If I am to join with your daughter, I must honor your customs." "Give me time," the queen narrowed her eyes. Silence stretched across the throne room. Then she nodded slowly. "One more day. Fail and your life ends." Rylan bowed again, but inside he was already counting every second. One more day. That was all he needed to turn the cage against its maker. The stars outside shimmered like cold diamonds as Captain Rylan's small explorer ship drifted closer to the alien world of Zithara. He had been following strange energy signals for weeks. The readings were like nothing human scanners had ever seen before. The signals were too strong to be natural, and yet too strange to match any known alien technology. Rylan leaned back in his chair, staring at the swirling clouds below. The planet was beautiful from orbit. Its surface glowed with rivers of green light and mountains rose high like the teeth of giants. Somewhere down there, something was creating energy powerful enough to reach deep into space. His ship, however, was not in good shape. The long journey had strained its engines, and one of the main stabilizers was failing. Warning lights blinked across his console. If he didn't land soon, the ship would tear itself apart. "Perfect," Rylan muttered, "chasing mysteries while the ship falls apart. Classic human luck." He pulled the controls, guiding the ship toward a wide plateau. The descent shook the cabin. Panels rattled and sparks flew from a console. The ship hit the ground harder than he wanted, skidding across the rocky surface before finally stopping. Smoke filled the air. Rylan coughed, grabbed his survival pack and stepped out into the alien world. The air was breathable but heavy with a metallic taste. Strange plants bent toward him as if watching, their long stalks glowing faintly. The sky was streaked with gold clouds, and in the distance a structure rose like a mountain carved into smooth curves. It shimmered with the same green light he had seen from space. "That has to be the source," Rylan whispered. He set out toward the structure, keeping his hand near his blaster. He didn't want trouble, but humans had learned in the galaxy that trouble often found them first. As he approached, massive gates opened without a sound. Tall alien guards stepped forward, their armor shining like liquid metal. Their eyes glowed pale blue and their weapons pulsed with energy. Rylan raised his hand slowly. "I come in peace. My ship crashed. I just need help." The guards didn't speak. Instead, they moved in perfect formation, surrounding him. One of them touched a device on his wrist, and suddenly, Rylan felt his body lift from the ground. Invisible energy bound him, carrying him forward through the gates. The palace inside was unlike anything he had ever seen. Walls of crystal curved upward into ceilings that reflected endless stars, as if the universe itself was trapped inside. Pools of glowing water lined the halls, and statues of alien warriors stood guard, their expressions carved with pride. At the heart of the palace sat the throne room. Torches of living flame floated in the air, and the throne itself was carved from dark stone, pulsing with veins of green light. Upon it sat the queen. She was tall, regal, and terrifyingly graceful. Her skin shimmered with silver patterns that moved like rivers, and her crown seemed to grow naturally from her head. Her eyes glowed brighter than the guards, piercing into Rylan as though she could read his very thoughts. "So," she said, her voice echoing across the chamber. "The human arrives," Rylan swallowed. He straightened his back and forced himself to stand tall, even though the invisible energy still pressed around him. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said. "My ship was damaged. I only ask for aid." The queen rose slowly from her throne and the chamber grew silent. The guards lowered their weapons, waiting for her command. She walked closer, each step smooth and deliberate. "You speak of aid," she said. But you have already been chosen. Chosen? Ryland frowned. For what? The Queen's eyes narrowed. For my daughter. Ryland blinked, unsure he had heard her coring. Captain Ryland woke in the glowing chamber after a restless night. He had spent hours tinkering with the wall conduit, learning how the palace systems worked, but now his mind was tired. When the door finally opened with a hiss, he sat up quickly. 2 guards entered. Their armor shone like liquid metal, and their glowing eyes never blinked. Between them walked Princess Lyra. She carried no weapon, only a small crystal tablet that shimmered with shifting symbols. My mother sends me, she said softly. You are to learn our customs before you answer her. Ryland narrowed his eyes. And if I don't? Lyra gave a small shrug. Then you will not live long. But knowledge may help you even if you choose death. She sat gracefully on the edge of the low table. The guards remained at the door, silent as statues. Lyra tapped her tablet, and the symbols shifted into glowing pictures. This is the Zitharan bond, she explained. Images of 2 figures appeared, their patterns merging into one. It is not only union of bodies but of spirits. When 2 join, their life energy combines. Strong bonds create strong leaders. My mother believes your kind has different energy, and joining with us will show great power. Ryland leaned forward, studying the image. He had never heard of anything like this. A merging of life energy? To humans, marriage was personal choice. Here, it was a weapon. He shook his head. Where I come from, people marry because they choose each other. Not because a queen orders it. Lyra looked at him curiously. Strange custom. Does it not weaken you? No, Ryland said firmly. It makes us stronger because choice means trust. Without choice, it's just chains. Her glowing eyes softened a little. For the first time, she seemed less like a princess and more like a young woman caught between duty and heart. For several hours, Lyra explained more about Zitharan culture. She spoke of rituals, of ancient wars, and of how their people saw strength as the only truth. To them, weakness was shame. Even compassion had to be shown through power. Ryland listened carefully, asking questions where he could. His mind worked like a machine, storing every detail. Knowledge was survival. By the end, Lyra closed her tablet and studied him. You learn quickly, she said. Faster than most. Humans adapt, Ryland replied with a faint smile. It's what keeps us alive. She tilted her head as if weighing his words. Perhaps that is why my mother fears you, and why she wants you bound to us. Later that night, Ryland was taken back to his chamber, but before the guards sealed the door, Lyra spoke quietly. There are those in the palace who do not obey my mother. They plot in shadows, waiting for her fall. If they succeed, you will not live either. To them, you are a symbol of her weakness. Ryland frowned. Why tell me this? Lyra's voice dropped even lower. Because you must see more than just her threat. There are dangers all around. Choose your path wisely, human. Then she was gone. The door closed and the silence returned. Ryland sat on the bed, thinking. His situation was worse than he had guessed. Not only was the queen forcing him into a choice, but enemies inside the palace wanted him dead no matter what. He tapped his chin, considering. The queen's threat was direct but predictable. A hidden faction, however, was unpredictable, and that made them more dangerous. 2 enemies, Ryland muttered. And no friends. He paused, then corrected himself. Maybe 1 friend, Princess Lyra, she had warned him. She didn't have to. That meant she might not agree with her mother's plan. That gave Ryland a slim chance. The next day, Ryland was taken to another hall for instruction. This time it was filled with alien books and glowing scrolls. Symbols floated in the air, forming words as he touched them. A teacher drone hovered near, correcting his movements with small bursts of light. Ryland played along, learning the basics of Zitharan writing and history. But while the drone thought he was practicing, he was also mapping the patterns of the palace systems that powered the room. He noticed the same green conduits running behind the walls, pulsing with energy. Everything in this palace was connected. If he could disrupt the flow, he could move unseen. While studying, he noticed a shadow in the corner. At first, he thought it was a guard. But when the drone floated away, the shadow stepped forward. It was not Lyra nor a guard. It was a tall Zitharan male with markings across his chest darker than most. His eyes glowed dimly and his cloak seemed to swallow the light around him. You are the human, the figure whispered. The queen's new toy, Ryland tensed. Who are you? The figure leaned closer, his voice like a hiss. We are the future. Soon the queen will fall. When that day comes, you will fall with her. Before Rylan could respond, the figure stepped back into the shadows. By the time the guards returned, he was gone. That night, back in his chamber, Rylan paced restlessly. His heart pounded. The warning was clear. He was a target for more than just the Queen's threats. He thought about Earth, about the stories humans told of survival. Humanity had always faced stronger enemies, nature, war, and even themselves. But they had always adapted. They had always found a way forward. Rylan clenched his fists. This is no different, he told himself. They think I'm trapped, but they don't know humans. Later, when the lights dimmed again, he heard a soft knock on the chamber wall. He froze. Then a panel slid open and Princess Lyra stepped inside. You should not be awake, she whispered. Neither should you, Rylan replied. She smiled faintly, then grew serious. What I told you before, it is true. The hidden faction grows stronger. They hate my mother's rule. They say she has grown desperate, that bringing you here proves her weakness. They plan to strike soon. Rylan crossed his arms. And you? Where do you stand? Lyra looked away, her glowing eyes troubled. I love my mother, but she sees only power. She does not see people. I do not know if her way can last. For a long moment they were silent. Two people from different worlds caught in the same trap. Finally, Rylan spoke. Then maybe we can help each other. If the faction rises, neither of us survives. If your mother forces me, I lose my freedom. But if we work together, maybe we both live. Lyra studied him carefully. You would help us even when my mother threatens your life? Rylan gave a small grin. Humans don't like being told what to do. But we do like surviving. And I'm not done surviving yet. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then perhaps you are not as strange as I thought? She slipped back through the hidden panel, leaving Rylan alone once more. But now he no longer felt completely alone. He had an ally, and soon he would have a plan. The palace of Zithera was never truly quiet. Even in the deep hours of the night, the walls hummed with power, and the crystal towers glowed like stars fallen to the ground. But that night, the air carried a different sound. A low rumble, almost like thunder, echoed from the far halls. Captain Rylan sat awake in his chamber, working again on the metal strips he had shaped from the meal trays. His plan was still incomplete, but every small piece of progress mattered. He paused when the rumble grew louder. This was not thunder. It was movement. Marching feet. Suddenly, the lights in his chamber flickered. The steady hum of energy wavered, then dropped to a faint buzz. Rylan's heart raced. The conduits, something had disrupted them. Not his work, not yet. Something else. The door hissed open before the guards could arrive. Princess Lyra rushed inside, her robe torn, her glowing eyes wide with fear. They are here, she whispered quickly. The faction moves now. They mean to kill my mother and me. Before Rylan could respond, a blast shook the walls. Crystal dust rained from the ceiling. In the distance, alarms wailed, their sharp tones cutting through the night. Lyra grabbed his arm. Come, we must move! The halls outside were chaos. Shadows flickered as figures in dark cloaks stormed through the corridors, their weapons glowing red instead of the Queen's green. The Queen's guards clashed with them, but the hidden faction moved fast and without mercy. Rylan ducked as a bolt of energy scorched the wall near his head. He pulled Lyra behind a fallen statue, his mind racing. He had no armor, no alien weapon, only his human instincts. Stay low, he told her. Follow me and don't stop moving. She looked at him in surprise. You would fight for me? Rylan grinned grimly. Better than waiting here to die. He scanned the hall. The attackers moved in groups of threes, efficient but predictable. They relied on power and speed, not subtlety. Humans, on the other hand, had made survival an art. Rylan grabbed a broken shard of crystal from the floor and tossed it down the hall. The sound echoed and two attackers turned instantly, firing at the noise. That was his chance. He rushed forward, tackling the third attacker from behind. The alien let out a sharp cry as Rylan wrestled the weapon from his grip. The design was strange, but the trigger mechanism was simple enough. He squeezed and a burst of green energy shot out, striking the wall. Got it, Rylan muttered. He pulled Lyra along. Come on! They moved quickly through the halls, avoiding the larger battles. Every turn showed more destruction. Fallen guards, shattered crystal walls, pools of glowing liquid from broken conduits. At one intersection, a group of attackers blocked their path. Lyra froze, but Rylan pulled her into a side passage. He crouched, examining the conduits glowing faintly along the wall. They pulsed like veins. He grinned. This palace runs on power flows. Break the flow and you break the fighters. Using the stolen weapon, he fired directly into the conduit. Sparks exploded and the hall lights wick. The attackers shouted in Khan. Captain Rylan stood at the entrance of the Queen's throne room, his chest tight with tension. The events of the past day had changed the palace forever. The hidden faction had been defeated, and the Queen's guards looked at him differently now. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a proven fighter, clever and resourceful. Still, the ultimate challenge remained. Zalera, the Queen demanded an answer. Marry her daughter, or die. He stepped inside. The throne room was as grand as ever, the walls shimmering with green light and flowing energy. The Queen sat on her throne, calm, almost regal, but her eyes burned with sharp intensity. Princess Lyra stood slightly behind her mother, her hands folded, eyes on Rylan. You return, the Queen said, her voice echoing through the chamber. And still you have not answered. Rylan bowed lightly, careful not to show fear. Your Majesty, he began, I have thought carefully about your demand. I understand your customs and I respect your people. But I cannot simply obey without reason. That is not how humans work. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Humans, you speak with pride, yet you do not honor your word. Do you think your cleverness saves you from my decree? Rylan shook his head. No, but cleverness can save lives if it is used wisely. He stepped closer. Your people face enemies, yes? And your hidden faction wanted to strike while I was here. They are strong, but I helped defeat them. I risked my life to save your daughter and your throne. I proved my loyalty not by words, but by action. The Queen tilted her head. You risked much, yet your life remained your own. Why should I trust that a human cannot betray us? I do not expect blind trust, Rylan replied. Trust is earned through action. I showed my strength when it mattered. I will continue to act for your people's safety. That is the only promise I can give. Lyra stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. Mother, he saved us. All of us, do you not see? He does not follow orders blindly, he chooses wisely. That is why he is strong, even if he is human. The Queen studied her daughter, then looked back at Rylan. You speak well, but words are not proof. You must show why your way is better than mine. Rylan took a deep breath. This was his chance. Your Majesty, humans are different. We do not depend on power alone. We depend on thought, on reason, and on adaptation. We can survive where others fail. We can turn threats into tools. I proved that in your palace when I helped repel the attackers. That is why humans are valuable allies. Not because we bend to your rules, but because we can think beyond them. The Queen rose from her throne, pacing slowly, her silver patterns glowing with intensity. Your words are clever, but strength is still required. Marriage is the bond that ensures unity. How can I be certain that your people will honor my world without this bond? Rylan held his gaze steady. Because humans honor value, not fear. If you force me, I may obey, but it will not be genuine. That is weak. If you allow me to act with freedom, my loyalty is earned. Actions prove worth more than chains ever could. I offer my alliance not as a servant, but as a partner in protecting your people. The Queen stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing in thought. Rylan's words were different from any she had heard. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but there was wisdom in their unpredictability. They could survive impossible odds. Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand gently on her mother's arm. Mother, perhaps he is right. He is not a threat. He is an asset. His way may seem strange, but he protected us when your own forces were challenged. Do you not see the benefit? Slara looked at her daughter, then at Rylan. You would teach me to value a human over tradition? Not over tradition, Rylan said carefully. I teach you to value results. Tradition has its place, but survival has its own rules. Your people live. Your daughter lives. That is proof enough. The Queen stared at him in silence. Minutes passed. Rylan did not move. He knew patience was part of negotiation, especially with beings who measured thought over hours instead of seconds. Finally, the Queen sat back on her throne, her posture relaxing slightly. You speak boldly, human. Perhaps too boldly for one so young, yet I cannot deny your courage nor your wisdom. You see the world differently. You adapt, that is, Rylan inclined his head respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I seek only to protect and to prove my worth through action. The Queen's gaze shifted to Lyra, and for a moment the air between them softened. You have my daughter's favor, Solara said finally. But your freedom is not yet fully earned. I will grant you one path. Work with us. Protect Zithra, aid my people. Show me your loyalty, then I may reconsider my decree. Relief washed over Rylan, though he kept his expression neutral. I will do my best, he said simply. Lyra's eyes shone with a mixture of pride and admiration. You have changed everything, she whispered. The Queen leaned back, still studying Rylan. Humans, you are unpredictable. I will watch you closely. But perhaps your way holds value I have not yet seen. Rylan smiled faintly. Then we will prove it together. Over the next hours, Rylan began working with the Queen's advisors, learning more about Zithran technology, politics, and strategy. Unlike the guards or other humans who might hesitate, Rylan moved quickly, solving problems and anticipating threats. He mapped energy flows, suggested safer patrol routes, and even improved some of the palace's communication systems. Every action he took demonstrated human ingenuity. He was not just strong, he was clever, creative, and calm under pressure. Each success earned the subtle nods of the Queen's advisors and the guarded respect of the Queen herself. By evening, the palace was calmer. The hidden faction's remnants had been secured, the Queen's forces reorganized, and the threat of sudden attack greatly reduced. Rylan had not only survived the Queen's challenge, but he had become a trusted figure within the palace. Lyra found him later in a quiet hall, far from the throne room. The glowing walls reflected the green light from the conduits above. You did it, she said softly. Mother sees your value now. You may not have won completely, but you changed her mind. That is rare. Rylan leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath. It was not easy. But humans, we survive by learning, by adapting, and by doing what needs to be done. You taught me a lot about your people, and I think they learned a little about us too. Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes glowing. Perhaps, the bond between human and Zithran can be more than a threat. Perhaps it can be trust, Rylan nodded. Then we will build that trust together, step by step, action by action. Lyra's smile grew. I like that. That night, Rylan returned to his chamber exhausted but satisfied. He had faced the Queen directly, risking death through words and logic. Yet he had prevailed. His life was still not entirely his own, but the chains of threat had loosened. Outside, the palace hummed with quiet energy, and in the distance, the stars shone as if approving his perseverance. He sat on the edge of his bed, thinking of Earth, of the human way of life, and of the journey ahead. One day he would return home. But for now he was learning another truth. In a universe full of strange rules, humans could survive and even thrive by staying true to what made them unique. And the Queen, the princess, and the palace had all seen a glimpse of that power. The sun, or what passed for sun on Zithra, rose slowly over the glowing palace. Its light stretched across the halls in green and gold, painting the walls with reflections that seemed alive. Captain Rylan stood in the central courtyard, arms crossed, watching as the Queen's guards trained and prepared for the day. The hidden faction had been neutralized, their leaders captured and held securely. But the palace still carried the tension of uncertainty. Trust was fragile, especially with outsiders. Rylan ran a hand through his hair. Today would be the day. The Queen had summoned him again. He had proven himself in battle and through negotiation. But this would be the final test of his worth. He was not afraid. He had survived worse. The throne room was filled with advisors, guards, and the Queen herself. Princess Lyra stood near her mother, calm but alert. When Rylan entered, the Queen's gaze swept over him like a sharp blade, testing his resolve. You return, Solara said, her voice steady and cold. And now, we see whether your actions are enough to earn your freedom and your place in our world. Rylan bowed slightly. Your Majesty, I stand ready to serve if it is needed. I offer loyalty through action, not chains. The Queen's eyes softened slightly, though her posture remained regal. You speak boldly. Boldness is rare, human, but words alone cannot prove worth. You must demonstrate your loyalty once more. At that moment, alarms echoed through the palace. The hidden faction had made another move. an attempt to break free from their secure location and strike the queen again. Lyra's eyes widened. "They cannot have learned their lesson," she whispered. Ryland straightened. "Then they will learn it now." Without waiting for orders, he ran toward the corridor leading to the detention area. The Queen's guards followed, but Ryland's speed and human ingenuity led the way. The faction members were armed, desperate, and reckless. They did not expect a human to take the lead. Ryland ducked behind a pillar and studied the energy locks keeping the prisoners in place. The technology was advanced, but not beyond observation. He noted the conduits running along the walls, pulsing with power. "They rely on control, not creativity," he muttered. "Time to change that." With careful G, he disabled a secondary conduit with a small enter